You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Athan Hristodulu.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Greeks Gridiron. I am Athan Hristodulu, and it is January 16th, 2022. We are smack in the middle of day 2 of the Super Wildcard Weekend, as we are currently at halftime for the Eagles and the Buccaneers, as the Buccaneers lead 17-0 in what has looked like a fairly decent dismantling of the Eagles defense by Tampa Bay and Tom Brady, also coming off the heels of the Bengals' first playoff win in 31 years. And on top of that, we had the Patriots getting absolutely blown out by division rivals, the Buffalo Bills, at the hands of Josh Allen in 5 touchdowns with about 300 and some odd yards. Crazy events so far, but I got one more game preview for you guys before I wrap up my previews for this week. And today we are talking about the Arizona Cardinals and the LA Rams. So make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on all the content we got rolling through this postseason here. And let's get into the discussion, shall we? So, the Arizona Cardinals and the LA Rams. This is an interesting matchup here. Another one of those division matchups where it is the third time these teams will face off against each other. So obviously no strangers there, division rivals in the wild card round. Love seeing this kind of stuff. I love it when it goes like 1-1 in the season. You get like a tiebreaker between the two teams. It's always fun stuff to see. So with that, let's talk some X factors. Who are going to be the big players going into this game? Who's going to ultimately help decide how this game is going to look? Well, for the Arizona Cardinals, for me, guys that I have to name just right off the rip, Marcus Golden has got to be one that I don't think a lot of people are talking about. The dude has 11 sacks on the year, paired up with his partner, Chandler Jones, who also has 11 sacks as well. A couple of edge rushers who can get after the quarterback and wreak some havoc, cause some pressures, and make quarterbacks uncomfortable. While on the offensive side of the football, you, of course, have James Conner, wide receiver Christian Kirk, but the biggest X factor for this team, and I think will ultimately determine how this game plays out, especially based off the last time these two teams met, has got to be quarterback Kyler Murray. He has been electric all year long. He was an MVP candidate for quite some time, but I think he kind of tailed off a little bit at the end of the year. Fumbles, interceptions, and it's not like he has the most in the world, but his touchdowns kind of fell behind. Yardage is kind of behind some of the top contenders for that MVP award at this point, but I mean 3,800 yards, 24 touchdowns, 10 picks, and one of the league highs in 69.2% completion percentage. The guy has been excellent. He has 5 touchdowns on the ground, averages 4.8 yards a carry. He is a dual threat weapon, and if you look at the last time these two teams played, him not playing well, throwing a couple of interceptions, no touchdowns scored through the air by him, was probably the biggest deciding factor in the Cardinals falling short and taking the loss. So with that in mind, I think if the Arizona Cardinals want to win this game, it is going to have to be on the back of quarterback Kyler Murray. On the flip side, when you look at what the Rams are doing, pretty similar situation with who I have for the ultimate X factor. But I mean, if you look at the lineup here, you have Cooper Kupp, of course, Odell Beckham on the receiving corps. On the defensive side, Von Miller, Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey. I mean, there's just so much talent to go around in this team. They have truly gone all in to win themselves a Super Bowl this year. And with that in mind, the biggest piece that they added this year and the reason they are going all in has got to be the X factor of this game for the Rams in quarterback Matthew Stafford. 4,800 yards, 41 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. He has 4 pick sixes on the year and a 67.2% completion percentage. I think this is a big opportunity for Matthew Stafford to silence some of his critics. He needs to have a great game here, and the Rams need to win. And win with at least like 28 to 35 points on the board to at least quiet down some of the talk about Matthew Stafford and his play this year. I know a lot of people have been critical of the interceptions going for touchdowns, and I understand that 4 pick sixes is not a good look. I keep hearing the whole Aaron Rodgers has like 4 in his entire career thing. Listen, Matthew Stafford has been a great quarterback. Regardless of whether they win or lose this game, that will not change my opinion. The guy threw 41 touchdowns and had 4,800 yards, nearly 49. I mean, 67.2% completion percentage is nothing to scoff at as well. There's been some bad decisions made here and there, of course, with anybody. I think that Matthew Stafford more so is just under the lamp a little bit more because of his situation and him being brought to LA to help push Sean McVay over the hump to get him help him get a ring. So we'll have to see how it shakes down, but I really really think for both of these teams, the big X factor in this game is going to be the quarterback on either side. Whoever has the better game, I think, will ultimately lead their team to victory. Now, some things to watch in this game that I have in mind. I have 3 different things listed out here for you guys. The first one that I've kind of noticed when I was looking at the last 5 weeks or so of the season, just kind of where the teams were trending as we headed into the postseason, my biggest question for this game is probably going to be but can the Cardinals actually keep up in this one? Arizona has dropped 4 of their last 5 games. That's obviously no secret. But when you look at the numbers here, prior to that game against Seattle, where they put up the 30 points against a Seattle defense that really has let a lot of people put a lot of points up on them, they were averaging only 18.2 points a game. Without Hopkins in the starting lineup, this offense has obviously not quite been what it was earlier in the year, and you can definitely tell there's a little bit of lagging going on right now for them. Arizona is going to have to find some production elsewhere. James Conner, AJ Green, who's had a few big games as well, Christian Kirk, Rondale Moore, if he ends up playing, because he is dealing with an injury right now. I believe it's an ankle injury. So they're going to need to find some offensive production, because when you look at what the Rams have been doing in their last 5 games, winners of, I believe, 4 of their last 5, if I'm not mistaken, 24.8 points a game with 30 points against Arizona back in Week 14 when they last played. And then you couple that with the fact that the Rams have actually been protecting Matthew Stafford so well, only about 2.6 sacks a game, and 10 of those sacks came in 2 of their last 5. So, I mean, there is a lot to like about what the Rams have been doing offensively, and not so much what the Cardinals have been able to do offensively. So I pose the question, can Arizona keep up? I don't really know, especially with just kind of the state that they're in right now. It has not been pretty. A lot needs to be righted for them to potentially win this game and move on to the divisional round. The second thing I'll be watching going into this game here, and this will be definitely an interesting one to keep an eye on as we go through the game, is who wins in the red zone here. And the reason I bring that is because both of these teams are on the higher side in attempts in the red zone, but they're somewhere around the middle of the pack in terms of red zone efficiency, getting into the end zone and scoring a touchdown. Both are tied for 14th together at 60% per trip going into the red zone there. So they are scoring touchdowns more often than not, and that is obviously better than a 50-50, but not quite where some of the top teams in the league are sitting at. And the reason I'm really bringing this up is because there is a discrepancy on how well these two teams play defensively in the red zone, whereas Los Angeles, an excellent team in the red zone. They've had 56 attempts to defend the red zone this year, only allowing a 51.8% conversion rate, which is 8th best in the league, whereas the Arizona Cardinals, when they allow teams into the red zone, tend to start to slip up, make some mistakes, allow teams to get in. They're tied for 20th at 60.8%, which fares well for the Rams. So I think, based off just those numbers and kind of looking at it that way, whoever wins this red zone battle more than likely comes out the winner in this one, which is obvious, of course. You know, if you're getting to the red zone more than the other team, or if you're getting in there and scoring touchdowns more than the other team, obviously you'll end up winning. But that will be a battle that we'll have to keep an eye on. Again, both teams right in the middle of the pack on how well they do getting into the red zone. It's going to boil down to whose defense steps up and plays better in that red zone, in my opinion. Last thing that I have to keep in mind is, how are these offensive lines going to hold up against both of these defensive lines and defensive fronts altogether? When you look at the numbers here, Arizona, 41 sacks on the year, tied for 13th, but not a massive jump when you're going from that 13th range up to the top 5 or so. You're only talking a handful of sacks because there's so many teams that are tied together. And they're also they have 162 pressures on the year, whereas someone like the LA Rams, one of the more efficient teams at getting to the quarterback with 50 sacks, 3rd in the league, are averaging right about the same at 161 pressures. Now, with that in mind, one thing that I am going to keep note of, and obviously it's been talked about a little bit, is going to be that J.J. Watt may end up playing. I will say that first few weeks when J.J. Watt was playing, it felt like this defense was a little bit different, a lot more aggressive, and just there was an energy and a fire that the Arizona Cardinals D does not have right now. And I think missing J.J. Watt for the duration of the year has kind of hurt the defense, especially the pass rush and even the run defense a little bit, because, J.J. Watt is J.J. Watt at the end of the day. Maybe not the player he was a few years ago, but still effective nonetheless, and a guy that offenses need to take care of. But when you look at how these offenses have fared protecting the quarterback, Rams, 31 sacks allowed on the year, tied for 6th. The Arizona Cardinals sitting at 39, which is 18th. Not bad between either of those teams. Obviously, the Rams a little bit better at protecting Matthew Stafford, especially that, like I said, that last 5 games, they allowed 10 sacks in just 2 of the 5 games, and I think there was a couple more in another one, so they were sitting at 13 or so, win the last 5. Not a bad job by LA, and then Arizona, no slouch themselves. Again, not the best, not the worst. They're right in the middle of the pack, but both teams are able to keep their quarterbacks fairly upright when the going gets tough. We'll have to see, because in my opinion, whoever's offensive line does the better job protecting their quarterback, I think will pave a nice clear path of victory for them. I do like the Rams offensive line a little bit better. Like I said, they have allowed a few less sacks, and especially these last few weeks, I feel like there's been a physicality that they've really brought to the game and definitely done a great job, minus the 49ers game where they allowed 5 of the sacks, that they've done just a really good job protecting Matthew Stafford. Now, if I was to label one big disadvantage for either of these teams, as I have done for the other previous 5 playoff previews that I've done so far, and if you haven't checked those out, make sure you do, has got to be for the Cardinals, their receiving corps. Obviously, we all know DeAndre Hopkins is missing, and from what I've read, it sounds like unless he's coming back sometime around, or unless the Cardinals make it to the NFC Championship sometime around then, is most likely where DeAndre Hopkins himself would be able to come back. So with that in mind, and also Rondale Moore's been on the injury report all week and is questionable. I kind of feel like I expect him to play, but if that does limit him, you're going to need guys like Christian Kirk, AJ Green, and James Conner stepping up to the plate and being the difference makers that they have been for this offense. Obviously, the Hopkins thing hurts. Rondale Moore has had some flashes here and there, so you're going to be a little bit shorthanded depending on how well Rondale Moore is able to handle playing. If he does play, and if he's not, obviously you're going to be shorthanded. I'll be interested to see how this receiving group fares, especially the running backs more so than anything, with, again, Hopkins out and the potential of Rondale Moore as well. Whereas when you look at the Rams, this kind of ends up benefiting the Cardinals, because while they're having this issue, the back end of the Rams secondary is going to be the biggest issue I think they have in this one here. It's no secret now. Everyone's been talking about it all week. Eric Weddle is going to be potentially either starting at safety or in a healthy rotation at I believe free safety for them. Eric Weddle was great for a long time in the NFL. It's a head scratcher for sure that they're bringing him in to play safety, but you have got to believe that they saw whatever they saw in him. Like, you didn't just call him and be like, hey, can you play safety for us this week? I'm assuming they had to have seen him, in some physical form. They had to have went out and at least tested him out a bit, just kind of, kick the tread on the tires and see what he actually had left in the tank. I'm assuming he's kept himself in football playing shape. So we'll have to see how that works out for them. But I mean, they're missing Taylor Rapp. They're missing Fuller. They must protect themselves over the top, prevent any, big plays from happening, because the secondary now is a little bit suspect. You're missing, your 2 key starting safeties going into this game here on such short notice. Interested to see how the Rams fare in this one, especially when it comes to the deep passing game. Hopefully we don't see Eric Weddle getting torched, or maybe I forget who it is that's playing the starting safety role on the other side for the Rams right now, but hopefully we're not seeing the Rams get torched over the top due to these injuries, because that would just be an unfortunate thing for the Rams. Now, as for the over-under, the final score, who I think is going to win, how's the spread looking for this one? At the time of me recording this now, Rams are minus 3.5, Cardinals at plus 3.5, and the over-under sitting at 49.5. Do I think the over-under hits that over? Maybe, but I don't think so. Ultimately, I do not think so. The Rams have put up 30 points, and I think the first time they played, it was only about 20 points or 17, one of those two numbers, whereas the Arizona Cardinals, like I had mentioned, are really struggling offensively right now, especially with the loss of DeAndre Hopkins, who was in both of those previous games that they played. So I think that's really going to affect how both of these offenses fare going into this game. I could see the Rams getting somewhere in the high 20s, maybe low 30s. Arizona, depending on how well they do supplementing some of the players they may and are going to be missing in this game, I could see them somewhere around, mid-20s, high 20s, but that means they're going to need a very good defensive effort if they want to come out winners in this one. So I don't really like the over in this one. I do kind of like the under, but could I see both of these teams putting, 26, 7 points per, and, the winner wins by 3 or so? It's definitely possible, but I kind of like the under in this one here. It just ultimately boils down to how well these defenses end up playing in this game. If again, the secondary, if it's really struggling over the top over there in LA, or, how does the defense in Arizona fare against this offense that's been clicking fairly well for the Rams the last few weeks? Definitely some questions there. As for the Rams at -3.5, I do like this one here. I think the game's going to come down to within about a possession or so, somewhere along those lines, and you guys will see based off my my score prediction here where I really think it's going to go, but I think they can at least hit the -3.5. There is definitely a possibility that this game ends at about a two-possession score line difference, so the -3.5 for the Rams is definitely something I like. As for the Rams at +3.5, not really sure how I feel about that one. As for my final score, though, and who I think is going to win this game, I am going to be taking the Los Angeles Rams, and I actually have them winning 30-17. I know I said that I think this game is going to come down to about one possession, but I do think that there's a possibility that Arizona's offense just lags behind a little bit too much, and the Rams are able to get the job done and maybe win a little bit more handedly, a la the last meeting that these two teams had just a few weeks ago. So I do like the Rams, and I like that -3.5. I think that's a pretty easy one to take as well. I like the Rams 30-17. They catch the dub and wrap up the Super Wildcard weekend this Monday night. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Who do you think is going to win this game? And I will see you guys in the next video. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday and have fun watching some football, because I know I am enjoying myself right now in football heaven because we're just watching all day. Have a good rest of your evening, everybody.